Okay, this is just going to be a video predominantly on extruding for Steve on the Blender for Facebook beginners page, Blender for Beginners Facebook page even. um, if anybody else finds it useful, then happy days. Just first of all, I'm just going to add a plane. I don't normally add a plane that way. There are two add-ons that I use an awful lot. I buy a chap called Wazoo. There's the pie menus and the right mouse button pie menus. I have my, as you can see, I have my add-ons set up to use them. It just means because I use a left, but I should point out also as well, I use left mouse select. So input, I select with the left. Always have done, because I come from other 3D software, namely Lightwave by New Tech, and so I'm just used to using the left mouse button. Could never get my head around the whole right mouse button thing. Anywho, so I'll just right mouse button and select a plane. It's just faster. And then if I'm in edit mode and I want to add something, I can right mouse button and I can hold Alt as I select it, and it'll actually add it to the object. If I don't hold Alt, then it'll actually switch to object mode and add it in object mode. So that's separate. That's one item. Just delete those vertices. Delete that. Alright, so into object mode, edit mode rather. Again, A, select all, scale, just because it gives me a bit more space to play with. And let's talk about extruding. Now, one thing Steve did mention when I had to put up another video for him, and he said he still couldn't get it to extrude, and he said even though he pressed D he couldn't get it to extrude, and I think I know what he's doing. So if I E and extrude, bump, and I'll do X to lock it on the EY to extrude on the Y, EY to extrude on the Y again, EX to extrude on that one, EX, EY, and they're all moving. Now Steve said he just couldn't get that, and I think what's happening is he's doing that, doing an E, and then he's clicking the mouse button. If you click the mouse button, you're confirming the extrude, so it looks like that you've actually got just that item you've just selected. However, if I do Control Plus, which expands the selection, you can see now I actually have 4 edges selected. So I'll undo that. 1 edge selected, Control Plus, 4 edges. And that's because what's happened is I've confirmed the extrude, so it's extruded to 0. So if I just press GX now, it extends the selected edge out, and you can see that there was actually a polygon there. So if I do E and then just click the mouse button, then I then select something else. What I've actually done is created double geometry there. Again, as you can see where I do that. So if I remove doubles, then I select it, then I'm affecting that one edge. But if I do E click, then as you can see it's actually got its own face. So I think that's maybe what he was doing. So he was pressing E, then clicking the mouse button, and then as soon as you click it and you're clicking and holding thinking you're going to move it, but it doesn't move. So then you could, if you've got your manipulator active, you can just click and drag on the arrow key to move it, or you could just G Y to move it manually. So what you normally do when you extrude is you click, press E, and then just drag the mouse without actually pressing any mouse buttons. And again, Y to lock it on the Y axis. Then click once to actually locate it where it is. So again, if I E click, that's now stayed in that one position. Now there are times you want to do that. Let's say I've got a face and I go E-click. Now in face mode it's even clearer, because if you look closely you can see you've got little black dots. That is basically the center dot for a face, and it's telling you that that face is there. But because it's got no depth at all, it's just showing up as a line. And again, if I see here I've got one face selected, and I do Control plus, and it tells me I've got 5 faces selected, because it's selected those around the edge. Control minus and back to 1. Undo it. So I can just plus, and I can WR and I'll get rid of any edges. I undid that, so again if I press E-click, then it looks like I've not selected out, but I can then move that face and it's all good. And that works in vertex mode as well, so you select a vertex if you accidentally E-click, but then you can move it with the arrow keys or GY. Then you can specify the extrusion as well, so you can do EZ, goes up, EY, go along, EX, go along, EZ, go down, and that's just extruded them. And then you can extrude individual points from there, so select that one. Now I have my snapping set to vertex. I very rarely use increment, and I always have it set to closest, but I don't have it set on, and I just use the control key to auto snap. So what I'll do there is I'll go GZ, rather EZ, start moving that up and down, then hold the control key and highlight that vertex, and that basically ensures that snaps to the same level of that. And then I could just select as motion, control tab 2, select those 2 edges, press F, select that edge and that edge. Actually, a point I want to make here, I very rarely actually work with that manipulator turned on, and the reason for that is if let's stick a couple of lube points in there and turn it on. If I select that and now I want to select that upper edge, I can't, because the manipulator's in the way. And so I always turn the manipulator off and I only switch it on when I need it. But 9 times out of 10 I don't even do that. I'll just specify the axis based on this here. This is the thing I pay more attention to. So you've got your X and Y here, and you know which is your positive and your negative by the state of that. So if I move this around like that, and I say okay, I want to extrude that, but I want to extrude it this way, I know that the arrow's pointing that way, so I could just DY and that'll go in that direction anyway. But if I want to move it an exact amount, I can go EY 0.2, but that's going the wrong way, which I know because of that, so I do that minus. So I'll go EY minus 0.25. So I know that's the negative Y axis, and likewise for this I know that this is negative X because the X is over there, so I can do EX minus 0.5, EX minus 0.2, EX minus 0.5, and then this one I can do EX 0.5 because I know that's on the positive X. So it's a quick way of working, especially when you're doing things like this. You can imagine, say this was a floor plan you were extruding, and you wanted to say extrude this 1.5 meters, so that would be EX minus 1.5. I'm typing this all in manually and then hit return. Then we've got a door which is say 1/2 meter wide. It's a small door, so you do EX minus 0.5, then EX minus 2, and then if your walls are say 0.15 thick, you go EX minus 0.15, then EX minus 3, and then I can extrude that wall, so that's EY minus 2, EY minus 0.5, EY minus 2, and there's your other door. And then I can just go into face mode, delete those, and that would be like a wall. So if I say go in, press C and just select these, and then I can go E, and the blue line tells me it's extruding in the Z. If I press Z again, it becomes free. If I press Z again, then it will be the Z axis based on what you've got set here. Yeah. And again, if you wanted to, I could just extrude that up precisely, and I could say, okay, I want my walls to be 2.3 meters high, so I'll go EZ 2.3 Z. There we go. And the reason I had to do the Z twice there is that initially, because of the orientation of these globally, then it'll automatically extrude on the Z axis, so I just have to do E 2.3 like that. Now if you wanted to take account of, say, adding a door in, we'll undo that and we'll say E 1.8 and then E 0.5, and that means then I can select these two, W and bridge edge loops, to give me my door and my bits over my doors. So, and again, now I can do there, press F3 and choose bridge edge loops. F3 is my repeat history, so just another thing. So that's a really handy thing when you're using Extrude, typing in things numerically. That's a very handy feature. So I say back to edge mode, we can just select that. So you can press E and return and then GX, or you can press E, mouse click and then GX, or you've just pressed E and drag the mouse but do not click it, then it'll only position it once you finish the click. So another thing to bear in mind is if we take these and we E them up, and I'm going to E that, drag it over there, drag that up, move that along on the x-axis, and drip that up. Right. If I turn the indicator on, this is one time the indicator's handy, as I can go normal. And so when I extrude there, it will want to extrude along the normal, so I'll do E and it'll want to go that way. So that's really handy. But if I press E, then it wants to extrude on the normal there, but if I press Z again, it's free, and I press Z now and it's actually obeying the global Z axis. So it's, even though the normal is pointing that way, press E, Z, Z, and it'll obey the global axis. Z again, and it'll obey the normal. So that is something that's handy to use. So you select that, and you can see it's always the Z axis that's pointing the normal. The Z axis is pointing away from the face you've selected. It's the same for an edge, but the edges are a bit arbitrary. And where I'd use that, I'd use normal there is just for sliding things. Another thing you can do is if you've got that selected, you do a shift 1 or a shift 3 or a shift 7, and it aligns the view to that, and then just press 1 and it's the normal view. And the beauty of that is I can select that face, do a shift 7, or Shift Control 7, or Shift 1, Shift Control 1, and that, or Shift Control 3. So my view is now aligned to that, so I can work on things in this order even though it's not in the order of the view. And I just press 1 to get back to the front view, Control 1 for rear view. So that's just a little something over and above. But I say all the extrusion it's pretty straightforward. If you do E and it doesn't move, it means you've confirmed it. So then you can actually just use the G key. So E click G. And again, that's the same for edges. E click and then just G, and you can move it. And the shading on that tells you that's the back face and that's the front face. I think I've covered pretty much everything on the extrude there. Oh, the one thing I haven't covered is if you've got multiples. So let's go over here and let's just delete that face, and we'll just click Control thing, and I'll WS to subdivide a couple of times. If I select these, I just select a few, and I do E, then it's trying to extrude, and it looks terribly messy. So what you do in that case is you do Alt E, and you extrude region, vertex, normal, and then again don't click, you just drag in the mouse. If you accidentally do click, then again you can do Alt S to scale that, like that. And if it looks messy like that and you want it flat, then just enable offset even, which is exactly what it would do with the Alt E. So if I select that and that, do Alt E, region, vertex, come up, and again offset even. And then if I select those and I want to extrude them as individual faces, I'll do Alt E, choose individual faces, and just drag the mouse up. Now it looks like they're together, but if I come down here and I change my pivot to individual origins, S for scale, you can see that it's not. So I can select those, say, select that one, Control click to select all four, Alt E, individual faces, drag them up, make sure I'm in individual origins, scale, and again there in that case I could just scale, say, on the Y-axis, so I'm drawing them thin, like that, and then scale on the X-axis, and then pulling them in. Then I could just E upwards, E upwards, and again scale them on the X-axis, push them down a bit on the Y. So you can get that effect by using individual faces. But if you don't use region of that, then it'll just extrude as a block. So that's pretty much every angle of extrude I can think of. Again, any questions, just leave me a message on Facebook, and I'll be happy to sort things out. Another thing, by the way, if you've extruded accidentally, and now I try to bevel that, you see the bevel's not working, and that's because that edge doesn't actually belong to anything. So WR to merge edges there. So now when I bevel it, it'll bevel. maybe not the nicest of geometry there, but it is something to watch for if you've accidentally extruded the edges and you don't realise it and you wonder why your bevel isn't working. That's all there is. Hope this has been of use. Do let me know.